Welcome back. Today I just want to look at the considerations when buying a leasehold business. So just to recap, a leasehold is when you buy a lease and it grants you the right to occupy land and also the use of buildings, and then you're buying the fixtures and fittings, the plant and equipment and the goodwill to operate the business. So some considerations when you're buying a leasehold business, probably one of the main ones is the term left on the lease. Is effectively that's one of the key things you're buying. Without the lease or the right to occupy, you really have no business. So is there 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years plus? The longer the lease, usually the better, and also usually the more expensive the leasehold business is to buy because there's more value, there's longer left to operate the business and then sell it to someone else. You should always check the conditions of the lease. I suggest you do this with a lawyer, but some quick ones are maybe how does the rent increase? So is it a fixed amount each year or is it by CPI? And is the rental amount, is there a to-market adjustment? So maybe every 3 years or 5 years the rent gets to go to somebody independent and it gets reset at a market level, which can be good. Especially, we see some leases that may be increasing 4% a year, and then at year 5 it goes to market, so it has an independent assessment and the rent actually comes down back in line with market rent. Is there a mechanism to extend the length of the lease? That's a really important one. You may be able to do capital works or spend some money on the property instead of the landlord, and to do that, the landlord will grant you an additional extension of the lease, which can be really valuable. And another one is, what are you responsible for as the tenant, and what's the landlord responsible for? This is mainly under the heading of repairs and maintenance, so just be really clear on what's your responsibilities, what's the landlord's. It's always a good idea as well to understand the industry that you're going into and look at the norms for the rental amount to turnover. So an example could be that the rental amount is 25% of the turnover of the business. Is this normal or not? Each industry is different, so you need to check that. But if the rent's too high, there's a couple of things. If the rent to turnover percentage is really high, it can be really crippling on the business. So it's something you need to really consider. And if it is too high, it can also be that there's an opportunity there that the business is underperforming, but you just need to have a check on that. Does the property need refurbishment? When was it last done? So that sort of links back to the lease. Who's responsible for what? The things that the landlord's responsible for, are they in good order? Has the landlord been playing nicely, effectively? And you need a good working relationship with the landlord. So a meeting with the landlord, trying to build rapport, trying to talk to the landlord about what your plans are and how they may be able to help you achieve your goals, and those plans would be a good idea. You should check that the buildings are in good order. We always suggest a building and pest inspection and other buildings up to code. If you're buying a motel, for example, is the pool fencing up to council specifications, or does money need to be spent on that, etc., etc. Some other things that you can consider is, why is the vendor selling? What's the competitive advantage of the business? You need to consider the location, because when you're buying a lease, you're usually tied into the location, because you're buying the right to occupy the land and use the buildings of the landlord to operate the business. So location's everything. And is anything going to change around that location? For example, is the council going to bypass your location with another road, or is a road going to be coming right past your place that's going to increase business perhaps? Is there a new competitor coming in that's closer to town or in a better location? Is that going to have an impact? Is there a local attraction that's going to leave the town that's been a big driver in business? So you just need to consider those sorts of things. You should also make a good assessment of the plant and equipment and fixtures and fittings that you're buying, because that's usually a big component. Is the plant and equipment in good working order? Is there anything missing? Do you need to buy anything else or update some plant and equipment that might be obsolete? Likewise, the fixtures and fittings, are they in good condition? Do they need updating, etc., etc. how's the business been performing? We always suggest you make an assessment with an accountant, obtain at least 3 years of financial statements, and just make some assessment on the business with your accountant. Suggest you get to an adjusted net profit position of the business and check that against industry norms and comparative sales, in terms of the value of the leasehold. You'll need to consider finance. So usually banks will lend 50% of the value of the leasehold. So for example, if the vendor's asking for $1 million and they're selling the leasehold, then the bank will lend you $500,000, all things being equal. So it's just good to understand that the percentage of equity or the amount of equity that you would need to hop into such a business. And you also need to check state laws. There's laws changing all the time around stamp duty. So in some states, stamp duty may apply to the leasehold purchase, and also may apply to the plant and equipment. So it's a real consideration there. And last but not least is also the split between the value of the goodwill of the business and also the plant and equipment. So we usually like to see an assessment made by a quantity surveyor, but it's something to check with your accountant before you go signing a contract. Just check that you're happy with the split of the business value between plant and equipment and goodwill. So for example, using the $1 million of value for the leasehold business, the vendor may come back and say that goodwill is $300,000 and there's $700,000 of plant and equipment, and vice versa. Just check that you're happy with this, and like I said, check that with your accountant and solicitor. Thanks for watching, and good luck.